classy grin. Welcome to the chaos. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, it's Kat from Cat's Corner. Thank you guys for joining in another episode. I believe this is episode 4. Um, just to let you guys know, I'm not on the top of my game today. I'm feeling a little under the weather. Um, but I figured we would push another video out because this is one that I was really excited about. Today we are going to be talking about Rosemary Kennedy. I'm also going to show you a couple of things that I got off of Amazon that we will be using for our Crafty Corner section and be using towards the lapidary projects. So I'm really excited about that. I also decided that we are going to hold off on doing menus with Cat. That was the one where we spin the wheel, it lands on a theme, and we build a menu based for dinner based on that theme. The problem is, due to my broken ankle, I can't go upstairs. The kitchen is upstairs. I can't get to the kitchen currently, and I could give the husband instructions, but I feel like that would be a lot of missed content. I feel like it's going to be more entertaining if we were both in the kitchen. So I'm trying to figure out how to work maybe like a cook-off or maybe a work together thing. Not really sure yet. So you guys have been updated on things that are going on the channel and ideas and the theme of today's video. We're going to take it over to Crafty Corner, and we're going to take this moment so I can show you the stuff that I got off of Amazon. Everything is going to be linked down below, so if you see something that you like, you can easily click on the link and it'll bring you to the item, and then you can just buy it. I'll have the prices next to it. Side note, not sponsored, so everything is my opinion. And yeah, so we're gonna jump over there and let's see what I got.
Queen of craft, queen of mess. Hot glue burns, but I'm still blessed. Paper cuts and a painted dress. Crowned in chaos, I confess.
Hi guys, welcome to the Crafty Corner. This is where we are going to be doing our projects that we pick from the hobby wheel. The first project that we landed on was lapidary, and lapidary is the art of shaping, cutting, and polishing, and sometimes engraving stones, minerals, and gemstones. Currently, I did not get the tumbler. I decided that the best thing to do was to buy the rotary tool and practice using the grinding, sanding, and engraving accessories that came with it. That way we can get the uncut gems and the tumbler, and we can do 2 different sets. One will be done using the rotary tool, and the other will be done using the tumbler and rotary tool. So you'll have a manual and the tumbler. Depending on how everything turns out, we will then also be using those gems and rocks and turning them into jewelry and other decorative pieces. Now, the other thing that I picked up was the flat stones. As you can tell, I did start to engrave and play around with the tools to see what I could come up with. My plan is to have all 120 flat rocks painted and engraved. Some are going to go out as gifts and worry stones for when I go to chemo treatments. I can hand them out to the nurses and other patients. Others are going to be are going to be holiday themed, so those will be handed out as presents. And some will be garden themed that we'll put in the garden that we will eventually be building. I am also going to be starting an Etsy shop depending on how the stones turn out, and I will be putting some of them up there to allow people to buy them or do custom designs. If you guys have any other ideas, you can comment below or contact me at catscorner34gmail.com. Now I did get the 4 items, so we got our stencils, our flat rocks, our routery tool, and we also have paint markers coming in. I figured those would make it easier than using brush and paint and water. Because currently at this moment I do have a small space to work with. So these are the items that we got. I will have links down below if you guys are interested in any of the items. The Amazon links will be down below, so you guys can just click and get to there quickly. The first is the Hardell mini cordless rotary tool. It's for sanding, polishing, drilling, etching, and engraving. And it's also very good at just being comfortable and really easy to set up. If I wanted to change, I just push this button and then insert, twist this until I hear a click, and then just like that. So it's all in, and then you just hit the plus or minus, depending on the speed and strength, and you just turn it on. It also has its very own flashlight, which makes it really easy to get into those little detailed areas. That was pink. I figured that way if anybody else had one in the house, you can't get confused with it. And the best thing, it comes with a UPS charger, and I believe it took me an hour to fully charge it when I got it yesterday, and that was in between doing projects and playing around with the rock. It also came with the really cute carrying case. Really really easy to carry, not awkward or bulky. The only thing that is a little bit awkward is when you have everything inside of the carrying case. It can feel a little jammed. It can get kind of where you're like, okay, what do I do? But then you just do a little bit of maneuvering and everything fits in really nicely. So I'm gonna say that and then it's not gonna work. So we're gonna do that, and then we just close it up and we're all set. I was also very pleased with how it felt when I was using it yesterday. It was very comfortable. My hand didn't get too tired, or awkward or sore, because since the stroke, having at times if I use my hands too much. They sometimes lock up a little bit. Altogether, the case and drill and the accessories cost about $25. The next thing I bought was, like I said, the different types of stone. I bought from Lift Tops 120 painting stones. That cost about $18. And this seemed to be about the average size of how much everything, how big it is and how much we have to work with. Which is fine because most of the stencils seem to fit easily, or you can maneuver. That's how I got the bird. The bird was a part of the stencil, but only one half of it fit, so I had to do some creativity. And these cost about $18 for 120. And then, like I said, I have the stencils, which are a mixture of what seems to be ocean, Halloween, holidays, plants, and fairies and mermaids, and just a mixture of everything, really. These cost for 15 sheets, $15, so about $1 a sheet. It does seem good quality. The paper is thick, so I wasn't tearing or anything like that, and that was even using the drill with it. None of them got destroyed. The only thing that I'm waiting for is the TBS 108 dual tipped acrylic paint markers. Those cost about $35 all together. And those won't be here until Wednesday. So those won't be here until like 2 days from now. I'm also excited because I'm going to get my chair. Altogether, the total amount to do this project cost about $93 altogether. Which, once again, I'll have everything linked down below. The next video that I do will completely focus on the hobbies and tools because I should have everything by then. So we'll keep an eye, just keep an eye out for that video that's coming out. And yeah, that's about it. So I'm excited to experiment more with these and figure out what artwork we can do. And like I said, the one that I'm mostly excited is handing them out to people and seeing their reactions. But yeah, so let's get back to the main video, which today it's about Rosemary Kennedy. So we'll get back into that video. Thank you guys. Bye. Today we are going to be talking about Rosemary, also known as Rosemary Kennedy. She's kind of the dark secret of the Kennedys. For the longest time, she was pretty much put in shadows due to a botched lobotomy. I feel like her story is one that should be known. I feel like her accomplishments and the things that she did should be known. And I also think that her story should be pulled from the shadows and brought into the light because she does sound like a fascinating person, and it is very disheartening and almost tragic what ended up happening to her.
say something?
Yeah. Why, Rosie?
Come on, Jack.
What? Gee, that's enough.
On September 13th, 1918, Rosemary Kennedy was born in Brooklyn, Massachusetts, to Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy. She was the oldest sister of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. and Ted Kennedy. Rosemary exhibited developmental delays, such as being slower at developing motor skills such as crawling, walking, and had to repeat grades as she struggled to understand her lessons. Due to the Kennedys having an almost royalist background in politics, with Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. being a strong American businessman, investor, and politician, and his children following in his footsteps, even to the point that John F. Kennedy did become a future president, they were determined to keep Rosemary's struggles as a dark family secret. Now, it is believed that Rosemary's learning delays began from birth. The night that her mother went into labor, the doctor who was supposed to help Rose perform an at-home birth was delayed due to a breakout of the Spanish flu. The nurse who was with Rose ordered her to keep her legs closed in order to prevent Rosemary from being born, and to try to keep Rosemary in until the doctor could be there. However, this did more damage than good because Rosemary's head was stuck in the birthing canal for approximately 2 hours. So it is believed that due to the lack of oxygen, she may have developed brain damage to the extent it hasn't been revealed. But that is one theory on why she had the issues that she did. At the age of 2, Rosemary was still not reaching the common developing steps that she should have been. She was having issues sitting up, crawling, walking. It's also believed that she may have had some sort of disability similar to autism. However, due to her family wanting to stay in a positive light in the media and their social circle, they often pretended that nothing was wrong with Rosemary, and they would often talk about how she was developing like a normal child would, and rarely did anyone mention her problems. That's also why it's hard to know what caused Rosemary's issues and how in depth it went, because you get so many mixed, you get so many people who don't want to talk about it because they don't want to ruin the family image, especially when the elders of the family, like the parents, were involved. The parents basically, they set the terms and everybody else just followed. Age of 11, due to her problems with schoolwork and the fact that she wasn't picking up her lessons, when she started having more issues with reading and writing, her parents decided to send her to a Pennsylvania boarding school that specialized with disabilities. They were hoping that she would be able to go in there and she would have an improvement. However, that didn't happen. she still was not improving. And when she finally turned 16, her parents sent her to Sacred Heart Convent in Elmhurst, Providence, Rhode Island. It was there that she was often found with her special needs teacher, Miss Newton. And her parents, as she still had a fourth grade education and she didn't seem to be able to get past that, to keep that out of media and out of the gossip, the Kennedys would bribe the school pretty much by giving them a new tennis court or a new donation, and arranging for John F. Kennedy to accompany his sister to a tea dance. They did a lot of things to bring positive publicity and status to the school, and in hopes that the school wouldn't talk about what was wrong with their daughter. The school does claim that they've never noticed a difference between Rosemary and the other children who went to Sacred Heart, which is possible, but it's also, at the end of the day, you're not really sure because of all the favors that seem to be passing around. Outside of school, however, there were diaries that were found that were handwritten by Rosemary. And from what the diaries tell, they spoke of many of her experiences. She experienced things like operas, tea dances, dress fittings, and other popular social interests for girls of that age and at that time. She also got to experience visiting the White House and the coronation of Pope Pius the Seventh in Rome. So as far as her image was, she was doing relatively normal things that a girl her age should have been doing. And as you can tell in her diary notes, she was able to write, but it does seem like she had a little bit of a dyslexia or something of that sort, where she was behind, but below the scale. However, her parents did want to create a image for Rosemary. So a lot of the times they would report to magazines such as Women's Day or Parents, and they talked about how she was studying to be a kindergarten teacher and she had interest in social work. Well, she also revealed that she wanted to work on stage and do theater work. In an interview with the Boston Globe, she did say,
I have always had a serious taste in understanding life is not given us just for enjoyment. For some time past, I have been studying the well-known psychological method of Dr. Maria Montessori, and I got my degree in teaching last year.
It's also important to remember that her father also would have his assistants prepare responses for Rosemary to recite to people. Now, it does, based on of writings and things that she has personally said, it is believed that she did want to be a kindergarten teacher or some type of teacher, and she did want to help out people.
Each Deb appeared with the traditional 3 white feathers in her hair. Mrs. Joseph Kennedy with her 2 daughters en route to a court presentation in 1938.
The Kennedys would pretend that Rosemary was quote-unquote normal and didn't have anything wrong with her. So to help keep this image, they would get her involved in special situations. One of them was she was presented to King George and Queen Elizabeth as a debutante. And to prepare for this, she did spend hours practicing the royal curtsy. However, on the day of her presentation, she did trip and nearly fall. However, this was treated as a triumph, as it didn't seem like anybody really reacted to the mistake. And this included the kings and queens, who it's reported they just simply smiled as if nothing happened. Um, and it does sound like anybody who interacted with Rosemary, they did have positive things to say about her. She did seem like she was just a happy child or teenager at this point, um, and wanted to just go with, uh, basically just she was very open to different types of ideas. In it was 1940s. Rosemary's sister Ernest stated that when Rosemary returned from the United Kingdom, there was a switch in her personality that was noticed. She was more irritable, difficult to control. She would even have like violent outbursts, uh, and have a physical reaction to things such as convulsions, violent rages. And people were worried that she was going to be a risk to hurting those around her in these moments. That's when she was sent to another convent school in Washington, D.C. Um, However, it was here that rumors were starting to grow. The nuns started to believe that Rosemary was involved in with multiple sexual partners. She was sneaking out, going to the bars and going dancing at night, and doing things that girls at that age were shamed for. And they were worried that her now being 22, she was either going to become pregnant or get an STD. When the rumors started to get back to Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., Rosemary's father, he began to worry about his daughter's behavior as well, although he was more worried about her behavior bringing shame and embarrassment to the family, and staining her brother's political career. So to prevent any more risks, that was when he did speak to a couple of doctors, and he, after being informed that a lobotomy would help calm her down and stop her from these quote unquote violent outbursts, Joseph P. Kennedy did agree. They did make it clear that after this lobotomy, Rosemary was supposed to be calmer and more controllable, and the desire to go out dancing and having random sexual encounters, if that was what she was doing, those urges would no longer be there. She would be the pristine Rosemary Kennedy. So without informing the rest of the family, Joe Sr. had the process done in November of 1941. That was when Dr. James W. Watts and Dr. Walter Freeman performed the lobotomy. Ronald Kessler wrote in 1996, in his book Sins of the Father, the night of the lobotomy, Rosemary was given a mild sedative and they made a surgical incision in Rosemary's brain, starting from the front of the skull to front of the skull on both sides. And then they used a butter knife like instrument and made a inch long incisions. Watt would move the instrument up and down to cut at the brain tissue, and during this time the other doctor would ask Rosemary, who was still awake, questions. Recite the Lord's Prayer, sing God Bless America, count backwards, answer who your siblings are, what's your dad's name. And based on her responses, that would decide how deep to go with the slicing. And then they would they'd ask a question, she'd answer, they'd do a slice, and they would do this until she became incoherent. That was when they stopped to see what the results were. They were expecting, normalcy. Sadly, that is not what happened, because the lobotomy was considered a botch. Now, once again, the diagnosis of what was wrong with Rosemary, there has been multiple answers, from autism, lack of oxygen, brain damage, bipolar. She had there were so many suspicions and opinions. However, Watts, the doctor who performed the lobotomy, did tell Kessler in his book that he didn't think Rosemary actually had any form of mental retardation. Instead, he believed that she was simply depressed, which it is possible that he is on to something, because at the age of 9, Rosemary was able to do multiplication and division, and use numbers such as 428 times 32, and properly get the answer of 13,696. Which, according to Dr. Brenham Brown, she was a former director of the National Institution of Mental Health. Her reports say that if a child at that age is able to do skills, from writing endearing letters, dancing, arithmetics, and even if it's at a lower speed, it does mean that she has a IQ above 75, which in most states, 75 is considered the cutoff, for defining mental retardation in children. And because of the fact that it's suspected that her IQ was above 75, the idea of something being mentally stunting her, that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, Rosemary did get brought up during John F. Kennedy's presidential run. She was often referred to as mentally retarded instead of mentally ill, in order to protect John's reputation and the family's lack of support. However, because the procedure that was done did more damage than good, Rosemary's mental capability did drop drastically. She went from being 22 years old to she was only able to act and have the ability of a 2-year-old. She lost the ability to walk, to speak properly, and she developed other physical ailments that made her life incredibly difficult. Once Rosemary's lobotomy was done, she was immediately institutionalized. That night, she was sent to Craig's house, which was a private psychiatric hospital that was 90 minutes north of New York City. And she stayed there until about 1949, where she was then relocated to Jefferson, Wisconsin. And this is where she pretty much stayed for the rest of her life. She went to Coletta's School of Exceptional Children, or at the time it was known as Coletta's Institute of Backwards Youth. Coletta's was an institution for more than 300 people with disabilities. They did allow Rosemary to have her own private house, which her father built for her, and it became known as the Kennedy Cottage. Rosemary was mostly taken care of by 2 sisters, one named Margaret Ann and the other one named Leona. And she had a car that would take her for rides, and she even had a companion dog that would go on walks with her. However, Rosemary did go from an active, beautiful, and lively woman to becoming a dark secret for the Kennedys. It was during this time that she was not visited, and her family hid the fact that she had the lobotomy, and it was hidden for about 20 years. No one talked about her whereabouts, and if asked, especially during John's re-election for the U.S. Senate, it was often just simply explained that she was a recluse and she didn't want to be around people. It wasn't until after her brother John became the president that they did reveal that she was institutionalized. But they did not use the excuse or the failed lobotomy. Instead, they simply said it was for her own good. It was just to help her with, her mental issues. They did finally admit to her having mental issues, but not to the extent that it was. Now, Rosemary's siblings were made aware of their sister's location in 1961. This was after their father had a stroke, and almost in like an iconic sense of karma or justice or whatever you want to call it, the stroke ended up leaving him unable to speak and walk. Now, it was revealed by Ernest Kennedy that Rosemary's condition was made public in a 1962 interview to the Saturday Evening Post. However, it wasn't until historian Doris Carnes Goodwin revealed the lobotomy. And that was revealed in her book, The Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys. In 1969, Joe Sr. did pass away. And it was once he passed away, Rosemary was no longer kept hidden or in the shadows. Her siblings started to become more involved with Rosemary, taking trips to Florida and Washington, D.C., and actually allowing her to visit family. She would even stay often at her childhood home in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And she was able to walk. She did regain that, although she did constantly always have a limp. And she never regained the ability to speak clearly. So even years after the lobotomy, the side effects were still, um, almost tragic. They turned her into this woman who could dance in front of kings and queens to, now she has a limp and she can barely swim. Um, Now, once again, it is up for debate on why the lobotomy was performed, whether it was believed that it was actually going to improve her and make her, think quicker and, um, in not be held back by the disabilities that she seemed to be experiencing, or if she was just a wild child that the family couldn't control. And that's something that I think will always be up for debate because of the type of person that her father was. um, it's very clear that he cares more about physical appearances and family, where the option of lobotomy didn't come up until the fear that she might get pregnant and ruin the family image came up. So that is one reason why I do have to kind of question the pure intent behind it, whether it was to actually help her or if it was just to gain a footing and be able to control her. And I feel like that's something that's always going to be up for debate. However, I do think that it's important, and she should be known as a woman who, even before her first breath of life, was fighting. She spent 2 hours in the birthing canal, and she still came out succeeding. Damaged, but she was succeeding, and she has a story that should be celebrated in a positive light. And it's tragic that because of the lobotomy, that's what's most known about her. And it is important to remember that she did so much more than just have a lobotomy. She visited the White House and she visited castles, and she worked and associated with kings and queens and went to the coronation of a pope. And she was a woman who enjoyed operas and tea dances and dress fittings. And she was known for having this warm personality and her love of music and dance, to the point that she wanted a life on the stage. She wanted to be, almost an actress. And, sadly, most of her adult life was stolen from her and she was forced to be a secret. But I think we should celebrate and take her story for definitely more than just a botched lobotomy, and remember her for who she was and who she could have been. It's also important to remember that procedures such as lobotomies that are a thing of past, Rosemary Kennedy's story is one that is also similar to so many people who have experienced horrible accidents. And it's important that we make sure no one ends up in a similar situation. The thing that I find tragic, it's not the botched lobotomy. I mean, that's tragic. But it's the fact that right after the botched lobotomy, she was essentially abandoned by everybody in her family for at least 20 years. And it took her father passing away before she was even able to be revealed in the light. And I think that's more important, and that should be the lesson that we get from Rosemary's stories is we have to make sure that people aren't being kept in the shadows, whether it's because they bring shame or embarrassment to a family, or their stories, are too dark, or whatever the excuse is. It's important that figures like Rosemary Kennedy are known for like the bright smiles and the dances that they gave and shown. Um, and it's important that we make sure that everybody feels like they're not being kept away. And I think that is the main thing to take from Rosemary's story. If you made it to the end of this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And you guys are awesome. I want to say thank you once again. Take a moment, go dance, put on your favorite song, and I'll catch you in the next video. Any questions or comments or anything like that, you can comment them down below, or you can email me at catscorner34@gmail.com. Once again, that will also be posted down below. And that's about it. I really hope that you guys watch this video completely, and I hope it does Rosemary justice. And thank you guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.